Welcome to the ITIL version 3 IT Service Management presentation. It is a brief overview designed to help you understand the important principles of IT service management from the ITIL version 3 framework. My name is Salman Faizi. I have background in both technical and business side of information technology, and I'm happy to share some of my thoughts with you on the ITIL framework. So let's get. What is ITIL? ITIL stands for Information Technology Infrastructure Library. And as that name implies, it's a collection of global best practices for IT service management. So you're learning from the collective experiences of various folks in various situations that have been codified into a set of principles. It provides a broadly known framework, so when you talk to somebody, they will understand in what context you're talking about the IT service management, and provides a common vocabulary so you can communicate and understand each other in a way that is most effective instead of having to explain terms and concepts. It was first published by the UK government in the late 1980s and updated to version 3 in 2007 2008, which is the current version. It allows an organization to establish a baseline. Now, that is really important because once you have established a baseline, you know how to measure yourself relative to that baseline. And then you can plan improvements, you can implement those improvements, you can measure progress above and beyond the baseline, and you can overall improve your operations and the IT service management. ITIL v3 is a lifecycle model with more focus on strategy, business outcomes, and business values. And it's contained in a series of 5 core volumes, each covering a different IT service management lifecycle stage. So, what are those 5 books? Service Strategy, Service Design, Service Transition, Service Operation, Continual Service Improvement. Service Strategy focuses on understanding the organizational objectives and the customer needs. And that is important to understand so that IT can deliver what the organization needs to deliver to its customers. Service design focuses on turning the service strategy that have been prioritized into a plan for deliverable business objectives. It's a design of a service. Once you have designed the service, then comes the service transition, which focuses on developing and improving the capabilities for introducing new services into support environments. So this is where you're going to build something tangible. And that when it's ready to use, you put it into operation and manage the service in supported environments. Continual service improvement is an important element that encourages you to continuously monitor your service, look at different elements of it, and improve it to deal with the changing business environment. Why use ITIL version 3? ITIL version 3 has many benefits. It is designed to align the value that the business provides to its customers. It's designed to align those values to the IT organizations. So with that alignment, most companies actually today deliver value through IT to their customers. And that's more or less true for pretty much all industries. So with that in mind, we recognize that IT is actually a strategic business unit. It's part of the strategy of an organization and how it delivers values. It's not an overhead, as some might think. It is a recognized rigorous framework, so you are trying to solve a problem or implement a service using an existing tried and tested framework, not reinventing the wheel. And the benefit of that is that you look at all the areas that you need to look at, and you have the language and you have the specific way of communicating with people who understand that concept, and it overall helps you with implementing a higher quality service. It helps you with tool selections, it has guidance, it has it has means to help you encourage the culture of service in your IT organization, and and then build that commitment to continual service improvement and achieve a customer centricity position where the customer is the most important in your business, right from inside the organization and outside the organization. And then ability to measure the delivery and change. What you can measure, you can improve. Therefore, these are some of the advantages that are more philosophical sometimes, but in reality, they translate into very practical outcome for your organization. So let's take an example. As I explained the ITIL framework, I would like you to consider an example of a brick and mortar store who's doing quite well selling to its local market. Now it's decided to expand its footprint to the national boundaries or maybe global boundaries. So therefore, what it has decided to do is to create an online store. And that online store gets created, then it's going to have the ability to sell to a much larger uh, market than it currently is selling to. So that has been designed as a strategy. So now let's take this example, and we'll continue to use this example and continue to refer to it throughout the example. But before we go in any deeper, let's describe the framework, the ITIL lifecycle approach. The ITIL lifecycle approach is based on the principle of ITIL. So that is at the very center of it. Once you have those principles understood and comprehended and implemented, then the first thing you need to do is make sure you have a comprehensive service strategy to establish an overall strategy for how IT services and overall IT service management is going to be delivered within your organization. Once strategy is identified and prioritized, then we need to design those strategies into specific services. And that's where service design comes into play. You have the service design to establish solutions to meet requirements. Once a service is designed, then we need to actually implement it. We need to transition it into a tangible service. And that's where the stage of service transition comes into the picture, where you're managing the transition through the life cycle. Once you have a service that has been implemented, verified, and is deployed, ready for customer use, you put it into service operation. And that is the day-to-day management of the IT services. Each one of these stages are further broken down into subcategories to help you think of various areas that are covered when you're designing an IT service. So let's look through those. Supplier management, supplier service level management, service catalog management, availability management. These are the areas that are covered by service design. When we go into service transition, you'll notice that it has change management, knowledge management, release and deployment management. A really important area: how you plan out your releases, how do you deploy them without causing disruption, or with minimum disruptions at least to the business. And service testing and validation, configuration management system. These are the areas that are covered in the service transition. Service operation, on the other hand, covers incident management, event management, and problem management. As users start to use the service, there are going to be incidents that are going to be reported. How do you deal with them? How do you deal with events? How do you deal with problems that are inherent to the system and not one-off things, but actually trends in the system that have to be corrected? That's part of the service operation. And once you have a service implemented, it has to be improved to adapt and respond to the changing market conditions, competitor pressures, and customer needs. So that is covered by the continual process improvement. And that is the area where you manage improvements to the IT services and ITSM process. You do service reporting and overall management of the service. As I touched upon earlier, ITIL version 3 is contained in 5 books. The first book that I'm going to talk about is the ITIL service strategy. So in my example of the online store, the organization decided that it is important for their business to have an online store, and that kind of a discussion and the analysis of that online store would be covered under an ITIL service strategy. It helps with alignment of the new and changing services to organization strategy. And it supports business cases for investment. Anytime you have an organization investing its resources into an area, then we better have a strong business case for it, as the resources are limited and there are many competing demands for those resources. It helps you resolve conflicting demands for services, improves the service quality by strategic planning. So quality is not something that is an afterthought. In fact, it is part of the strategy. And It ensures that the organization can manage the costs and risks associated with their service portfolio. What I have found in my experience is that the earlier you identify the risks, the better chance you have of dealing with the issues that are mapped out by those risks when you actually meet them. So, right from the strategy point of view, start thinking of the risks and develop mitigation plans and a way to deal with them before you hit them in the critical path of your delivery. So issues are that actually occur, and risk is a chance of an issue occurring. The service design, the benefits of the ITIL service design are covered by the ITIL service design book. So in my example of the online store, once it has been identified by the strategy that a online store is needed, it has to be designed into a service. Requirements have to be gathered, needs of the business have to be understood, and then ultimately put into a service design. And a lot of negotiation and a lot of understanding goes into this design, such as agreeing the service level agreements with internal departments. Perhaps the internal departments in my online example would like their problems resolved within 1 day and would like an update every 2 hours on any issue pertaining that is important to them. So that would be part of the ITIL service design. Another important element is measuring IT quality in business terms. So the business users understand how IT quality is improving. Quality is a complex topic, but if we can translate it into business terms, then the non-technical and the technical audience is going to understand it better and overall and see how it affects the bottom line of a company. It helps you reduce the total cost of ownership. It helps improve quality and consistency of service, and provides for an improved IT governance. IT governance is a necessary element of any IT organization or a service, but we have to provide it in a way that is not a hindrance, but actually the needed element to provide better service. And overall, more effective service management. Next, I would like to talk about the advantage and the benefits of ITIL service transition, which is covered by the ITIL service transition book. What this does is that it aligns the new or changing services with the organization's requirements and business operations. And it provides the ability to adapt quickly to new service requirements. So if the online store decides to add another requirement, such as the ability to deal with returns, then the service transition, the service should be able to respond to that quickly instead of putting it on a long-term roadmap. Change is always difficult. No matter where we are, change is always difficult. But change is also required to keep up with the changing times and the changing and business environment. Change cannot happen automatically. It has to be planned and it has to be executed for increasing the chance of success. And that is a topic covered under the ITIL transition. And that might include deploying a service, that might include creating a release plan, that might include communicating the value and minimizing the outages, and etc. It also provides for improved organizational agility and flexibility. Organizations have to be flexible and agile to respond to the rapidly changing business climate. And it provides a consistent and rigorous framework for evaluating the service. So now you have everyone looking at the service through the same lens. So what they see is the same thing, what they talk about is the same thing, so therefore it makes communication easier and they can improve things collectively together and understand the risks associated with that. The next book that I want to talk about is the ITIL service operation. And the benefits of this area are that delivering and managing services at agreed level to organization, customers, and needs. So whatever the business needs to support, you need to understand that, and we need to support that within the IT or service management framework. If the business needs the online store, in my example, to be up 24/7, 365 days a year, and to be able to recover within 2 hours of any catastrophic failure, then that is something that has to be planned for and prepared for, so that minimum disruptions to business can happen. But on the other hand, if the store only needs to be up and running between the business hours of 8 to 5, then you don't need to invest so many resources unnecessarily to provide a more than what is needed by the business. It also helps to manage and monitor the technology that is used to deliver the and support services, and that will put us in a proactive position to preemptively deal with problems as they occur. Management of incidences, categorizing incidences into major and minor categories, etc., and recovering service when it goes down. And then also ensuring that appropriate IT resources are in place to support the overall service. It is not something, support of a service is not something that just happens. You have to plan for it. You have to allocate bandwidth for it. You need to make sure proper resources are allocated before you start the service operation. And cost effectivity is always an important area in any element, including service delivery. Now, the next book is ITIL, Continual Service Improvement. And that is something that basically embeds the culture of quality within the organization, the commitment to ongoing service quality, the commitment to improvements to the service and the underlying processes. A service is only going to be as good as the underlying processes. Technology will not solve for a bad process. And reviewing and implementing of appropriate business-focused service measures so that business understand how IT is delivering value, and how IT is delivering actually not just value to the business users, but value to the customers alongside with the entire organization. It helps to measure the return on investments, the value on investment, and just the quality becomes part of your business as usual. This culture of continual improvement. It's not something that people's attention have to be drawn upon, but it's something that's so embedded in their daily habits that they're always thinking about it. Some companies that are using ITIL include, here's a cross-section of companies from different industries and different geographies: Oracle, Exxon, Hewlett-Packard, UK Post Office, KPMG, Microsoft, Shell, and many more. There are many more companies, and they're benefiting from this framework of ITIL as a way to deliver quality service to their customers. Some critical steps to success that I have found to be very helpful when designing a service include developing a vision and a strategy. This may sound like a common sense, but I've found often a vision and strategy are lacking, and people just start doing things just to do things. And knowing what we want to do and knowing where we want to get help us get there. And then once you have that vision determined, once you have a vision, then we need to communicate that change vision. How are we going to get there? How are we going to get to that future state where that vision becomes a reality? And that communication is going to be a critical factor in achieving that vision. Empowering employees for broad-based action. So employees, when they see a problem, an issue, they take an action. They feel that there's trust in them, and they feel empowered to take upon themselves to deal with the issues instead of waiting for somebody else to point out to them. Generate short-term wins. Again, this is something that seems to be missing in a lot of operations that I have seen. It's so important to have short-term wins so that people start seeing the results quickly, and then when you have the results, people start to rally behind them, and overall you have better success of implementing a service or anything for that matter. And there are new approaches that should be part of the culture of the IT organization. They should not be resistant to those. Get management buy-in. It's a critical element of the business. Managers are making decisions on a daily basis. When they are bought into it, they'll make decisions to support your efforts. Don't expect people to understand what ITIL is or what anything is for that matter that you're introducing into the operations, but plan for it, train people, make them aware, and that those are important elements of change management. Sometimes I've seen that there are such detailed plans that when you go to execute them, about half of them don't even apply, yet so much time is spent in this laborious process of planning. I personally feel that it's better to just plan and then have a bias towards action. Just start delivering things and then improving them as we go on. Overall outcome of ITIL and overall payback is, improved processes. You have reduced cost of doing business. You have reduced effort in doing keeping the lights on your business. You have better processes in place. And the last item here I think is very important, is to help build better relationships across IT and the rest of the organization. IT is such a critical element of any organization, yet communication across different elements of an organization is not something that always happens very easily. In reality, it is easier for each department, for each group within an organization to operate in a silo, because within the silo they understand what is happening, and it's actually the easier way. It's harder to collaborate and work across. Initially, it's harder to collaborate, but in the long term, it pays off very nicely, and then you have better relationships, and you are able to understand the needs of the customers and the different departments and deliver on those, and they understand that your pain points, and overall it's better for the entire organization. Some recommendations and best practices that I would like to share is that understand what ITIL is all about, especially the importance of people. Articulate that business value as a means to enabling and solving key business priorities and pain points. Obtain support from your management team, and then not just management team, but also create core teams from champions, with champions from all different areas of a company to drive the ITIL adoption. Oftentimes, a executive edict is not enough to drive a change, but a grassroots effort results in a much efficient change. Develop and retain the right people with the right knowledge level and right experience, common sense, soft skills, work ethics, and customer centricity. I don't really see this as a big problem, but I just still wanted to point out that certification alone is not enough, and this element, however, the next sentence I have is a bigger issue. Instead of asking somebody who's already overloaded to take on a new role, have dedicated roles. And it's known that organizations have limited resources, but instead of making someone do a half attempted job in two areas, it's better to have both those areas done correctly by allocating proper resources. And with the uncertainty in business environment, there's no book or method that provides a comprehensive solution for every possible scenario that arises in a corporation or in an organization. So we have to adopt this really great ITIL framework to the needs of the organization. The second recommendation and best practice that I would like to share is that being realistic about existing IT service management process maturity and improving those gradually. A lot of IT service management processes are already in place in many organizations, but that still does not mean that they're efficient and that they conform to a framework. And then we should be careful not to overstate the maturity level. We should always be in a proactive mode instead of reactive mode. And that really goes back to the comment I made earlier about identifying risks before they become issues. Optimizing time to value by first solving identified business priorities and pain points. This is going to really help you get the support of the entire organization. And prioritizing and enhancing critical to business ITIL processes. first. So whatever is going to help the business, implement those first instead of having a systematic approach where you just do step by step implement processes which may not have the highest value to the business. Conduct a maturity assessment to determine gaps needed to be filled to be where you need to be, and then use this data to guide staffing, skills, and technology decisions. So you have a more data-driven approach that is consistent across how you measure performance, progress at various times. Number 3 recommendation and best practice is to evaluate technology only after you've addressed goals and people and processes. I myself love technology. I have seen this quite often where the desire to throw technology at a solution instead of addressing the underlying goals and people and process issues. Technology is only going to work if the process underlying it is robust. And once we have exhausted the process and people element, then we should carefully choose the IT technology to solve the issue. And I would highly recommend prioritizing simplicity over a complex solution and implementing a service that is scalable right from the start instead of waiting for the needs to arise at a later time and then scaling. And no matter how archaic or how different the other services are, the other technology is in the organization, the new technology, new service has to integrate with that. And without that integration, the service is not going to be of much use. No matter how good and strong your capabilities are, they should only be turned on only after addressing the required people and process aspects. Only when those are in place, turn on the capabilities. Sometimes a really great capability fails to take place or take root because the existing support was not there. And consider software as a service and other delivery models. It can be a great way to receive an element of your service as a service from somebody else, or receive the entire service from somebody else, but recognize that SaaS is not a comprehensive solution. It's not the magical word that some people might think it is. It can be a red herring. There are issues to solve and deal there as well that are very important. Recommendation number 4 is to plan beyond the technology project. I personally think that it's very important to make the technology available quickly than later and adjust it according to the real world execution and evolve it as your business experiences new scenarios. And plan for realistic adoption. Oftentimes, no time is allocated for adoption. On a project, if it takes 3 months to implement, then that's the duration of the project. But the reality is once you make this service available, then the adoption is just as important, and it needs to have dedicated resources to make that happen. And I found that very long-term projects don't succeed overall because people stop seeing the value in them. So if there really is a really big project, then I would recommend breaking it into multiple smaller projects and addressing those each year. As a planning cycle for most organization is 1 year, so that should be the maximum duration of a plan and its implementation, in my opinion. Recommendations and best practices number 5. Regularly communicate ITIL's value and involve the IT and non-IT stakeholders so that the communication is received by both in a manner that they both can understand and act upon. It is vital that a consistent message is delivered to the sponsors and the core team on the ITIL's value, plans, and implications. Tailor a clear message. This is easier said than done, but I think any effort spent in this area is going to be well worth it. Craft a message that is understood by the technical as well as the non-technical audience. Only then you're going to need to obtain the synergy that is required for a successful execution of a service. And ITIL is really a compass. It's not, it's not something that you need to get at, but it helps you get where you need to go. It's a framework. It is just saying that you have ITIL implemented does not mean all the problems are going to be solved. Set clear expectations on roles and responsibilities, and trust both IT and business users with ITIL success. So thank you for listening to my presentation. This is the end of the presentation. Thank you very much. Again, my name is Salman Faizi, and here's my email address if you have any feedback that you'd like to provide or any questions you may have. Thank you for watching.